Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Falling Water. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's kind of break things down bit by bit. We'll kind of do it person by person. So obviously, let's start off with Burton's side of the story. We finally learned the lady of his dreams' name, and her name is Olivia. And it seems like obviously that basically she was kind of a plant. Like obviously season one was basically like, oh, she was there to kind of manipulate you and everything. And we kind of learned more about that this season. That basically she's kind of like a hired mercenary in the sense of like she was hired to keep Burton busy while the whole like dealings went on at the firm and everything with the whole like selling children, which is interesting because I thought, season one made it seem more like it was just James that this whole deal dealt about him just because of how powerful he is. But apparently they've been doing it with other kids too, in particular dreamers, powerful dreamers like James, which also shows us that he's not just the only one, which I like that they're building up on that because at first the first season kind of treated it like, oh, he's the one. Even amongst the kids, he might be even more special. He might be even more powerful. To be fair, his mom's a very powerful dreamer, so maybe that's kind of where that comes from. Maybe this season will also tackle his dad's situation, because that's something that wasn't tackled at all last season either, so maybe that kind of plays a part in it, but nevertheless, it's it's kind of interesting, and I'll kind of dive into this a little bit more later on with other things too, but it seems like they've taken a lot of season one, and it's kind of like Supergirl, like a lot of stuff from season one to season two was kind of dropped and never really going back to, and I'm curious, is that what they're doing with it? Because certain things with Olivia, obviously season one made it seem like, well, no, she was kind of a victim in all of this, like she was just doing what she was told because it's like, oh no, they held her captive and everything, and it seemed like a certain direction they were going to take him. Maybe that's the direction they were always going to take it, was this, that it's like, no, I was hired to do this. I was hired to mess with you. Like, that's all that was. Like, it legitimately seemed like, okay, she was hired to mess with him. Like, in the first season, it's like she was captured and her mind was all messed up and everything, and then she stabbed him and just kind of went a little crazy just because of everything she went through. But now this season is kind of spinning it as like, no, she wasn't crazy. It was just like the whole thing was just her acting. So like I feel like they pulled back and like changed things up when he went into the second season. So that's how I felt about that, because I thought it was just kind of interesting. Because the last time we saw her, she wasn't in the most stable condition. But now I guess, that's their way of compensating for that. Like, no, it was all an act. I was meant to keep you busy. Which is kind of sucky. I didn't realize, like, her situation, Burton's situation with her is kind of a similar situation to Hold's wife and the whole Woody situation, because she would kind of get into Woody's dream. Woody would get into her dreams and stuff like that, having an affair. That was more of an affection type of thing, whereas Olivia was like more of a job. She was hired by some third party to kind of do what she needed to do. So it wasn't necessarily the firm that hired her, it was someone else to kind of let things go by. But nevertheless, well, I mean, it's probably connected to the firm, but the firm is just kind of on the lower end of the totem pole. Woody basically said that last episode. And for Burton, this is all about like, for him, this is hard because, like, I think it's kind of an interesting thing too, because like they had that moment inside their dreams, and like she's like, don't tell me you didn't feel anything. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because it was a dream. It was a lie. If it was in the real world, maybe it meant something. But this is just like, it's just, how can I believe anything you say? Because all you've ever done, all throughout season one, everything you did was you manipulating me. They knew that Burton, with his military background, wouldn't stand for what they were up to, so that's the whole part that Olivia played in all of this. So, but it turns out Burton wasn't the only one that she was tasked with keeping an eye on. There's this Dr. Leon, that she was asked to keep an eye on too, but he turns up dead this episode because he has to be connected to this whole thing too, and they killed him to keep his mouth shut. Once again, makes you wonder if this has anything to do with the Shadow Man, because it's a similar thing that happened like Kumiko Taka's mom, because like she had her mouth and eyes sewn shut. So I mean, it's that situation where it seems like a lot of stuff is unrelated. Like it seems unrelated, especially to the Shadow Man thing, but maybe in actuality it's I don't know. For right now, it seems like they might be two separate storylines, but maybe it's all going to be connected in the long run, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Like, that whole Kumiko situation was like, well, in its regard, it's like, well, it's understandable what that meant. It was symbolizing, like, for her not to say anything about the Shadow Men, I'm surprised it didn't do her ears, too. Maybe it did, but, I mean, it looked like it was just her mouth and her eyes. I thought it might have been like a see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil type of thing. I don't know. Like, I didn't really pay too much attention to her eyes. I didn't pay too much attention to her ears. I just paid attention to her mouth and eyes. But maybe it was like that for her ears too. I don't know. Nevertheless, I mean, to be fair, the Shadow Man's trying to keep his identity a secret, so I understand why it's like the eyes too. And the Shadow Man probably doesn't talk either, so I don't think you really have to worry about the ear thing. But nevertheless, getting back to the old Burton thing quickly, it does seem like some of what Olivia experienced wasn't 100% a lie. Like, she does legitimately have feelings a little bit for Bert, but for him, it's still that situation of like, how can I believe you after everything we've been through, you know? And it's actually kind of funny, too, because Burton kind of brings it up. It's actually kind of ironic. She was meant to keep Burton busy, but she's the one that kind of set him on this path. Because, like, he buried a lot of his morals and stuff working for the firm and stuff like that. And legitimately, if they had not put her in his path, maybe he would have never really, like, I don't know. Like, he probably would have eventually found out, but it motivated him to kind of get out of his shell and just be the person he was before, essentially. So they inadvertently put Burton on this path, essentially. So I think that was kind of an interesting thing for him to kind of point out. It's like the irony behind it. They wanted to keep him busy and they kind of motivated him unintentionally, you know, so with her capturing everything because she was so important to him, because she did too much of a good job of implanting herself in his life and he cared too much for her. So that when she went missing, he strived to find out what happened, leading him down this rabbit hole, you know, chasing after Alice. I didn't even think about that comparison. Maybe that was kind of an obvious thing last season, but now, like, in retrospect, it's kind of like, oh, there's that comparison there. But nevertheless, initially she was going to talk to the FBI, but, you know, Burton's like, well, I can't protect you. These people have long reach. They're connected to the dreaming world, which makes it easier to get to people and everything. So it's just like, I don't know, like, Burton's like, I can't risk putting you in danger. So it's kind of interesting because it's like she folded into the story, but now it seems like they're removing her for now. I mean, there's still that situation that, like, if she runs, she's going to have to get as far away as possible and keep running because these people have long reach, especially if they found out she helped in any shape or form, you know, So now Burton's going to have to try and find a different way of going to the FBI, some new evidence without, you know, like Olivia's testimony or whatever. I mean, question is, like, how much could she say exactly? I guess she could say she was hired to do this and that, but it's like she couldn't go into too much detail because a lot of her job entailed dreaming and stuff like that, and it's like not everyone knows about that. So also learned an interesting thing too. I thought was kind of interesting. It seems like this season they're also diving more into like how the dream world works, because Olivia's like, regular dreamers, you can't alter the structure, not like the whole like bending the world and like basically transforming the bounds of reality inside of a dream, being able to change the structure. That's not something every dreamer can do. Like, so for Olivia, she's not a powerful enough dreamer. So like when she was with Leon, it's like all they did was talk, because she couldn't do with him what she could with Burton, because Burton was kind of the more powerful dreamer. So I guess it's a situation of like, you kind of manipulate them into kind of building the scenario for you, essentially. So that's why she was kind of like, it's easier with powerful dreamers rather than people who can't really dream, who aren't powerful dreamers, and yourself not being one. So I thought that was kind of a little interesting, like, kind of like development and building of that world, you know? Because I don't think season one ever really went too far to make you understand exactly how that reality works, especially in this season, because they're changing a lot of the structure. Like, it's like 100% new environments. Because a lot of the environments we saw in season one, I feel like were mainly like, I don't know how to, because a lot of them were connected to Tessa's realities. I'm surprised we haven't seen, I mean, it might just because of that, you know, show-wise perspective, it might them just be changing locations, so you're not using a lot of the old locations anyway, like Marcello's isn't being used at all. It was a big focal point for the story last season. It was kind of a hub point, especially for Burton and Olivia, but eventually for the other characters too, but I guess that's no longer a thing. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me. It seems like every other world, like, I mean, because it seems like there's certain signature worlds in this season, because it's like Taka and his mom Kumiko always meet in that white space. So I'm curious what that's supposed to represent. Like, is it supposed to represent like a kind of corner of the dreamscape that they're in? That kind of like, okay, if I build something here, if I structure something in this corner, Kumiko's corner, then maybe it would draw too much attention. So maybe that's why it's kind of a blank canvas. I don't know. That's my interpretation. Maybe thinking too much about it, but nevertheless. So I'm interested to see where Burton's whole storyline goes, especially because they brought up the fact is that there were other kids as well, powerful dreamers in this whole situation. So not just James, but like it still probably won't change the fact is that James is still important. And there's this house of cards that could easily come crumbling down about this whole children trafficking situation. So now moving on to Tessa's situation, which things get complicated. That whole Mark situation kind of threw me off because, like, it's kind of a funny thing. Like, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Like the whole Jeremy thing. I kind of saw it coming, but I was hoping. Like last episode, I was like, please don't let it be Jeremy, because it was just the fact is he was getting close to Tess, and you're always a little paranoid about people that get close to the main characters. You're like, I don't know if I can trust you, especially because it's like, well, the last person she got close to last season was Bill, and couldn't trust him. So I was worried kind of if a similar thing happened, because I said it last episode, I was saying this episode, I was like, please don't be a bad guy, Jeremy, please don't be faking it, and it's like, oh, lo and behold, it is him. I did like the whole situation around Mark and everything. It's like, in retrospect, it's like, come on, dude, you were acting super suspicious, but Tess follows him and everything, started asking him all these questions, like, okay, this and that, and then like sees in his dream, like he's using her as an example, like got all these stuff from other women and got Tess tied up, and it's like, oh, like, well, there's no going back now, and puts a drill to her. So I was like, yeah, that's enough to mess with anybody. But it turns out like, oh yeah, Mark was basically, all that was because that was him dreaming about his novel, like thoughts about like, oh, what could I do? And I guess because he found Tess fascinating, he wanted to use her as a subject. I mean, it might be one of that it could also be that situation where it's like, well, the fact of the matter is you can't control your dream. He's just like a regular dude, so he was probably just dreaming random crap, and he just ended up, subconsciously he chose Tess just because he actually liked her. Even showed up for flowers, wanted to take her to a movie, but now he's like, no, you're crazy, because she pepper sprayed him in the face. But it's like, come on, dude. You gotta admit, it's like, oh, how do you know where she lives? It's like, because I saw your truck parked. It's like, come on, dude, that's a little creepy. That's a little creepy. Like, you came off, but to be fair, maybe he's just super awkward and very, like, antisocial, so it's like, you know, but come on, dude, come on. She was in the right, and she's like, I'm sorry, Mark. It's like, you're alright, Tess, you're alright. But Jeremy, dude, I should have figured this much. You know, I'm actually kind of an idiot. I didn't catch it the first time. He's like, just stop, Tess. And then she paused. I was like, oh, what happened? And then it was like, oh, right, he just said her name, didn't he? I was such an idiot. It completely went over my head for a second. I was like, right, he just said her real name. So that was kind of interesting. So I am curious what group he worked for. He says like the group I'm with isn't the one that took James, so it's not the green sneakers that Kumiko is connected to, which we haven't seen hide nor hair of them, even though they were such a big part of season 1. Once again, another thing, I'm like, are they pulling that back? Like, what happened to that group after everything went down? I guess maybe because they don't have an easy way of tracking Tess and him anymore, because Kumiko's device got messed up because of Taka last season, so they can't keep an eye on him anymore. And maybe Kumiko, because of everything that went down last season, is kind of pushed off into, like, her whole space that she's in. Like, I brought up, maybe she's doing that herself. Maybe subconsciously Taka put her in a, like, blocked off state so she can't communicate with anyone. I don't know, like I said, we haven't seen hide nor hair of the green sneakers this season, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But nevertheless, it's like, well, what group do you work for? Because there's so many dang groups. Like I said, we haven't seen anything from them, but there was White Sands, and now there's Bill's side of things, and then there's the firm. So it's like there's so many people already, and now we're adding on top of that, there's the other groups out there, the ones that whoever it was that Olivia was working for, and whoever it is that Jeremy is working for, because they want James and Tess because of just how powerful Tess can be. I mean, is so. Well, she's not going to go down that route again of like people trying to control her son and take him away from her again. So I don't know. Ultimately, we'll see. It might be connected to White Sands because they were the ones that were trying to make a contract of like, oh, we can protect you and everything. So like H. Roberts might make a return. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. But that's immediately kind of in the forefront. Like it might be him because he's trying to get her to sign that contract last season about, oh, we'll protect you, kind of witness protection like situation. But nevertheless, the way things looked at the end of the episode almost made me think like Tess might turn around just because of how she looked, because it's like she can't, like, for her, she's looking at her, you know, James, and it's just like, you know, she sees the danger that's coming, but at the same time she doesn't want James to have to spend the rest of his life running, because it's like, I forgot who told her, I think it was Woody that told her last season, like, yeah, if you run, you're going to be running for the rest of your life until James is ready to be old enough to protect himself, you know? So I thought that was just kind of an interesting turn. Even more messed up is because, like, the whole sex dream she had about him, that was partially him too. And I'm like, man, everyone is using sex as manipulation in this series. It's like, oh, you get in someone's head, you have sex with them and manipulate. It's like, I guess that, like, you know, amongst dramas and stuff like that, that's a real world way of manipulating someone, is with, you know, emotions and sex. But I guess, like, even in, like, the subconscious dream world, that still applies. I mean, even though there's that whole thing about, like, ultimately every dream you have, there's that stereotype of, well, that joke that every dream you had, like, basically is connected to sex. It's all about sex in some shape or form or something like that. Isn't that supposed to, like, date back to Freudian stuff or something like that? That basically everything is interpreted means something about sex. I think that's what it is. Could be completely wrong, but nevertheless. And I kind of brought him up earlier, and I kind of skipped over talking about it in this episode too, is Woody. Because Woody's getting close to the mayor. Now, he gets all up in her dreams, kind of much like he did Holt's wife last season. But it seems like it's more of a situation, it is to kind of get close to her. Like, whereas that was just kind of for his own personal gain. Obviously, like, I think her character's name is Bennett. We learned her name this episode, Miriam McCormick's character. But, like, it seems like that's what he was hired to do, because she was like, oh, get all political. So the question is he meant to get close to the mayor and kind of incept her dreams and mess with her and make her kind of go more the route that Bennett or whoever Bennett's connected to wants her to go? Or is this about crushing her so it's a lot easier for Phil Whitaker to kind of take over the person that's running against her? I'm curious. It seemed like it might be the former, like it's all about, like, swaying her in certain ways. Like, because the whole point was for Woody to get close to her. So, I mean, it still could apply the other way, get close to her so that basically he can accept her dreams and basically crush her. Because it does seem like this is kind of Woody's specialty. Which, in retrospect, it's like, you never really thought about how much, like, Woody and Olivia's jobs are very similar in a sense. I mean, and once again, Woody's whole situation was recreational, whereas Olivia's was like, no, I'm paid to do this, you know? Paid to not care as well, so. But nevertheless, I'm interested to see where that goes with that whole situation. And then finally, we talk about Taka's side of things, which you have his partner Alex being like, dude, you're reading too much into this stuff. Like, oh yeah, you found this. How'd you find this? I was like, oh yeah, I noticed that the dimensions of the house are off. It's like, that's a good excuse. I was like, how are you going to work your way around that lie? I was like, oh, no, never mind. You found the way. You're like, oh yeah, I looked at the schematics. Like, something just seemed off. And I stumbled upon this hole. Which Alex is just kind of like, dude, it's going to end up being like Sam's DNA. Stop wasting time. It's like, I go home with my girlfriend, dude. Everything's good. I don't take work home with me. Obviously, that's not the case with you, because even going as far as like, oh, are things good between you and Sabine? He's like, well, yeah, things are fine. Which are not later on. And they kind of have a big fight about the whole Kumiko situation. Because I brought it up earlier, the whole, like, her mouth being sewn shut. That was all about the Shadow Man, but I was saying, like, it could still be kind of interpreted as, like, Leon situation of those two things being connected, but more so than anything, at this point in time, it 100% points to Shadow Man, like I said, whether or not it's connected to the whole other thing that Burton's investigating too, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But, Taka's kind of like, yo, I'm gonna have to take Mom home with me, which Sabine was super against. You know, it's like, which understandably so, because it's like, oh, dude, all the things your mom did last season, not only did she manipulate you, let's not forget she kidnapped me, which once again, I don't know if that's one of those things they're keeping or not. She never expressly used that as that'd be a good defense. Like, let's not forget your mom had the green sneakers kidnap me, because let's not forget that whole thing was her idea. So it's like, you know, your mom's not a good person, and she's just going to continue to manipulate you. She, like, ever since you were a little boy, all she's ever done is hurt you. So kind of break out of this. Right. The thing I was thinking about earlier, I was like, there's something I want to kind of tie into that. Is the fact that Taka was like, oh, we never fought. I was like, did you guys have arguments back in, like, it's like we never raised voices? I was like, but didn't you guys argue and kind of, well, I don't think they ever raised voices at one another or really argued. They had disagreements, but I think that was prior to them dating, so it doesn't really count. From back in season 1, so maybe that's what that's about. Because even Taka was like, oh, we never really fought, which Alex is like, well, no, that's a good couples fight. And the fact of the matter is, don't wait around. You know, you call her and tell her you want to fix things. And he's like, thanks. You know, it's like, you're right. It's just like, yeah, I know. So, which kind of got me thinking is like, is this like Taka's like first real relationship? I mean, we don't really know much of like Taka's prior life. Maybe it's just, I mean, because it's not relevant to the story. I mean, maybe eventually down the road it might be, but for now it's like, it makes you wonder, is this his first relationship, or is it just that thing of like, well, you know, when you're in a relationship, you tend to not think of things that are just the obvious. It's like, oh, this is the obvious thing to do, but maybe it's just such a foreign thing to him, like being in a relationship. It's like, honestly, I don't know how to really handle things. Like, couples fighting is normal. Like, oh, I should do this. It's like, you know, cause like, once again, I think that applies to anyone. It's just like, oh, you kind of don't think about something that is 100% obvious to you. So I don't know. This whole relationship thing is still kind of somewhat newish to him, even with like Sabine, which is kind of interesting because like it's just a thing I couldn't help but notice. But they were having sex, which is like, cause remember last season Sabine had her whole like her thing. It's like some people might not be able to accept it, but this is just how I am. So I don't know whether it's just like she got comfortable around Taka, so that changed. It was just like a little thing I couldn't help but notice. I wonder is that why they did that specifically? Be like, oh yeah, and here's a little bit of a thing to show you just how tight Taka and Sabine are because of that retrospect, you know, and because of that that particular thing. So I couldn't help but notice. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because that's a lot fresher in my mind because I did rewatch the first season recently, so I couldn't help but notice that. So I thought that was kind of intriguing. Did not expect things to kind of play out the way they did, especially because, you know, talking to being, oh, we made up, everything's good. Alex is like, okay, yes, there's someone else's DNA, but that doesn't change the fact that Sam did it. It's like, you know, Taka's like, someone else is part of this. And you have Alex being like, oh, okay, sure, see you in work tomorrow. It's just kind of like, she doesn't understand Taka, but at the same time, she's like, there's something here. Yes, he's a bit of an oddball. Yes, he's causing me more problems because he's making me work on a case that should be done. We should be focusing on other cases. But Taka's got something. There's something else here that I guess it is our job to kind of investigate. It's like, this case was over and done, but Taka, you're overcomplicating things type of thing. So, but I did not see things playing out the way they did. And one of those things I kind of foreshadowed it earlier in the episode was like, oh yeah, like, you know, she's like, oh yeah, sorry, I had a nightmare. Like Sabine was like, I had a nightmare. I don't remember what it was about though. I was like, huh. I thought that was stemming from whatever it is, the green sneakers or whatever did to her. I was like, oh, what did they do to you? And she's like, she's like, what did they take you or whatever last season? He was like, and Sabine was like, I don't know. I don't remember. So I thought, you know, maybe in retrospect that had something to do with the Shadow Man too. Maybe like, while that was happening to her last season, he like was already in motion. Is this the question is this a more recent thing or has the Shadow Man always been active? Like I said at the beginning, my thought has always been that's Bill. It's gotta be Bill because he's super powerful when it comes to the dream world and like his abilities might have manifested in a different shape or form. Cause this is, in retrospect, it's kind of like he's almost got like a Freddy thing going on because he can affect you in your dream. But it seemed like, because Freddy's whole thing is, you know, you die in your dreams, you die in the real world. It seems like his situation is like he can bring your dream world into reality. It seems like he kind of has abilities similar to Burton where he can bleed one into the other. The waking life into your dream world. Because sadly, she sees all these bugs and everything. I'm like, oh man, the Shadow Man's getting to, Sabine. I did not expect that it was her killing Kumiko. I was like, oh man, Taka, get downstairs. Like, you know, Sabine is probably hurting herself. I was like, oh no. And it's like, nope, she's killing Kumiko. And it's like, well, in retrospect, it foreshadowed it too because it's like, well, because the Shadow Man didn't want Taka getting any answers because it's like, nope, apparently he's going to still keep diving deeper into this. So now Taka's going to feel responsible for it because he started diving deeper into his mom, like kept his mom nearby, diving deeper into trying to dream with her to figure things out. Like she died for it, which is kind of interesting. Wasn't expecting that. I guess, you know, because it's just like, oh yeah, she was such a big part of season one, and it just seemed like they had more planned for her. Once again, it's like the green sneakers aspect kind of fall back. So I guess that was them kind of pulling back Kumiko's story too in that regard. I don't know, because I feel like there's a lot still left unanswered about her story, but I mean, maybe that's just me. So I just thought that was interesting, and I'm curious to see what that means going forward, because it's like Taka will know the truth, but obviously there's the whole investigation into this, and it's like proving Sam's innocence, and now he's got to help prove Sabine's innocence in this whole situation, because it's not like he can cover this up as a cop and everything. I don't know, maybe he will try and cover up, maybe like, but it's his mom, because it makes it a little bit different because it's his mom. Even though they had that complicated relationship, that's still his mom, you know? So it does beg the question, like, what is going to go down in the next episode? That was a big hit. Like, God, I wasn't expecting that. So, like I said, a lot of foreshadowing, but I still didn't, you know, didn't even think about it. I was like, holy crap. So, like I said, I'm very interested to see where everyone's story is taken in next episode. Really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good